Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the latest on the latest Tory skip fire. In this case, Boris Johnson inadvertently handing over evidence of further crimes, sacking his taxpayer-funded lawyers, threatening to sue the government for doing its job for once, with his allies threatening to bring Sunak down if he doesn't protect his former boss, or at least according to some unnamed allies. Oh, and just to add to the complexity, the chair of the COVID inquiry is also threatening to sue the government, with rather more credibility, over not releasing enough information on what Boris Johnson was up to during the pandemic. Popcorn time. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. Right, where do we start? So, I've already described the Conservative Party as a raging skip fire this week. The analogy no longer does the situation justice. It is now a fully fledged forest fire which has enraged a swarm of killer bees, which has then descended on Tory town in order to exact bitter retribution. At this moment in time, the Conservatives are doing very badly in the polls. They have no plan to improve things. They're currently reduced to cheering inflation figures, which still represent costs going up well above the level of people's incomes. And the immigration figures have just come out today, and no Tories got a positive spin on that. But I may talk about that later, maybe later today, maybe later this week. But basically, for the Conservatives, it's a time for unity. A time for their MPs to pull together, adopt the fortress mentality and work as a team against, well, not so much outrageous fortune, because it's the consequences of 13 years of their own mismanagement. But unity is not the order of the day within the Conservative Party. I discussed yesterday how Boris Johnson is being investigated by the police for even more serious lockdown parties. These involve purely social gatherings at Chequers as well as Downing Street. Now, it may well be that the Met Police are at last forced to investigate the infamous ABBA party. Boris Johnson is absolutely raging about this. He has sacked his government-appointed lawyers, you know, the ones we were paying for, and decided to appoint his own team. Oh, does that mean we stop paying his tawdry legal defence then? No, his plan is that he will engage his own lawyers, who will obviously cost more money, and that we will still foot the bill. Now, right there, I'm going to say, in all sincerity, Rishi Sunak should absolutely put a stop to that right now. I know we could say that Sunak should never have agreed to carry on funding Johnson's legal team habits when he became Prime Minister, but you can understand the politics. He needed to avoid upsetting any factions within the party then. However, although I wouldn't say Sunak is now in charge of the party exactly, he has certainly isolated Johnson's support. When the Windsor framework came up for a vote, Johnson tried to rally his support to vote against it. He managed 22 rebel votes, and that included his own. And some of those voting against the Windsor framework were voting against the Windsor framework, not in support of Johnson. The idea that Johnson's cult in Parliament could mount any sort of challenge against Sunak seems fanciful at the very least. I am sure that Rishi Sunak has the power to pull the plug on the public funds for lawyers that Johnson has been getting and make him pay for it himself. I could believe he could do that. And Sunak is going to need to face them down anyway, so why not now? Because there's the latest bit of nonsense in the Telegraph. Now, the Telegraph are claiming that the 3 MPs which Johnson is making lords in his resignation honours list, including Nadine Dorries, are all threatening to resign their seats in the Commons if Sunak doesn't act to protect Boris Johnson. The original plan was to defer taking up their seats in the Lords until after the election to avoid stepping down from the Commons midterm, triggering awkward by-elections. The Telegraph claim that they won't defer if Sunak doesn't play ball. Now, regular viewers of this channel may be scratching their heads at this and going, oh, Phil, didn't you do a video recently where you talked about how the House of Lords Appointments Committee had said that they're not allowed to defer and they'll have to either turn down their peerages or resign from the Commons before the election, thus triggering the by-elections anyway? Yes, I did that video 1 week ago today, in fact. I must be Mystic Meg or something. How come I can't win the lottery? The Telegraph basically are repurposing the story as if to make out that these MPs would be triggering those by-elections because of a perceived lack of support for Johnson, as opposed to the fact they've been told they have to by the House of Lords. In other words, this is the most pathetic threat ever. It's not a threat to Sunak because he knows that they're going to have to step down if he can't persuade the committee to change its mind. It is the impotent rage of angry people who've lost their power to inflict malevolence on others. You know, that I will just point out here, it's worth pointing out here, the Telegraph story, by the way, is false, because Nadine Dorries immediately came out and said it was. She said, no, we haven't discussed this and we're not going to do this. So basically, this isn't a case of the Telegraph taking what maybe one MP said and blowing it up and extrapolating into completely weird directions. This is the Telegraph literally making the story up from scratch. Nothing. It's based on nothing. Because Nadine Dorries, of all the 3 MPs who would, you know, stand down out of spite to protect Johnson, it would be Nadine Dorries. If she's saying this is rubbish, it's rubbish. There were threats to block Sunak's legislation as well, if he didn't help Johnson as well. That'll also not concern Sunak. Johnson's supporters wanted to bring Sunak down after the local elections. They were preparing for months. They set the date of their group therapy session conference for a week after the elections in order to inflict maximum damage. Damage caused? None. The following conference, the National Conservatism Conference, damage done by there, okay, a fair amount. But the Boris Johnson fan club, not a thing. All came to naught. They couldn't even persuade Boris Johnson himself to attend. You know, they know it. They know it's all come to naught. The thing is, it's not even threats from Johnson's mates in Parliament. Like I said, Nadine Dorries has denied all knowledge of this. So this is basically Johnson's mates in the media trying to make something of nothing. No matter how unhappy Tory MPs are about the current situation, and they must be deeply unhappy, there are 2 things stopping them doing what Johnson's supporters would ideally want. First, Sunak, it sounds mad to say it, but he has brought some relative stability to the party, and they know this will be destroyed if they have another leadership contest. Second, they know that the public are way more upset at the likes of chaos monsters like Braverman and Johnson than with Sunak. Johnson's support in Parliament currently consists of Nadine Dorries and Priti Patel. And he has other MPs who wish he were in charge, of course, but there are none who are agitating to make it happen now. They accept that it can't really happen. Even Jacob Rees-Mogg, huge supporter of Johnson and, as importantly, a huge critic of Sunak, has said Sunak's in place now, mustn't be removed before the election. There's no point of it. It just damages everyone, does no good. So Johnson is left howling at the moon because there's nothing else he can do. The boy who wanted to be world king, who became prime minister, the narcissist who bent his perception of the world to his will, has had to come face to face with reality. He cannot stand the fact that things are not transpiring as he would wish. Consider that he used to get visibly angry when Keir Starmer would trap him in his own lies in PMQs. He would get visibly upset when someone dared to suggest that his view of things was not reality. When you said that he wasn't the greatest thing since sliced bread, he used to get really upset. Well, now this is happening within his own party. More than that, with the relatively obscure junior minister, which he personally picked out to be his chancellor, to a narcissist like Johnson, the betrayal will bite deep. But what will doubtless bite deeper is being faced with his own impotence. He's basically going to have to go through Partygate all over again. Because as I said yesterday, this isn't more of the same. It's not just more examples. These are fundamentally different parties. These are the parties he really needed to avoid being investigated for. Because these are not just unlawful gatherings, but the ones that his allies are going, yeah, but they were working. There's a bit of a grey area. No, there wasn't, but, you know, they will say that. These were purely social events. Nobody can spin these positively. Notice how his allies are they're not trying to excuse these parties like they did with the work ones. A couple have tried and made an arse of it. Most of them are focusing their effort on attacking the officials who reported them to the police, not what's actually transpired. This is going to be terrible for Johnson's reputation. Not only are people already satisfied that he betrayed them, but now they're going to hear about the really bad stuff. So the ones who were fooled by maybe a bit of a grey area because they were working, he'll lose those. And Johnson can do nothing. He can't hide evidence. He's reliant on Sunak to do that for him. Speaking of which, because a great deal of evidence has been withheld from the COVID inquiry, the chair has demanded it be handed over pronto, or the Cabinet Office will find itself in court. And that's not an idle threat, like Johnson threatening to take them to court. Although Johnson is threatening the Cabinet Office with court, his threats are completely meaningless because they were just carrying out their job. And also, if Boris Johnson takes the Cabinet Office to court, the court is going to have to examine the diary entries. There's going to have to be some scrutiny of them. That's the last thing he wants. But the chair of the COVID inquiry has the legal rights to the evidence they're demanding, and they will get it. And what will Johnson do then? Legal processes can take time, of course, yeah. But the clock's ticking. The inquiry will surely run well into next year. And the longer they are delayed in getting the evidence they want, the longer the inquiry will run. I imagine they'll be still reviewing evidence after the next general election. I cannot imagine that the subsequent Labour government will do anything other than say, what's that? Oh, you want more evidence? Oh, no problem. Have whatever you want. Give us a list and we'll get it all to you. Next day. What will Johnson do then? The same as now. All he can do is rage. He's got some measure of influence over the government still. Some measure of influence. Because in his man-childish tantrum, he can actually do a lot of damage to the Conservative Party. When Labour are in power, he can't do anything. All he'll be able to do is rage. And he'll rage like the entitled little man-child he is, coming up against consequences for the first time in his life. Only they're not really consequences, are they? Because what are the consequences for him? That he's not going to be allowed to be Prime Minister. I'm not allowed to be Prime Minister. I don't see it as a punishment. That he might get a few more police fines. He can afford them. That the public might not regard him very fondly in the future. Well, he'll still have more supporters than I do. None of these are punishments. Welcome to everyone else's world. Except everyone else doesn't get to enjoy their irrelevance in a big bloody mansion with millions in the bank. You know, I will tell you what, I am really sick of this man now. You know, I enjoyed his downfall, even though I knew he wasn't likely to face real consequences for his crimes. But, you know, that's done with now. All we're left with is down, he's gone. All we're left with is the feeling that the rest of the world are looking at us, at our government, and laughing. Even Trump's government wasn't this dysfunctional in its final months. You know, I am absolutely sick of him. I will continue to chronicle his political death throes because they're important. But his presence in our lives offends me now. He isn't getting his comeuppance. He's just been told that he's going to be less relevant in public life while still living a life of luxury, while still going to America, earning millions for giving stupid speeches, telling lies to drunk businessmen. That's his consequence. And he's upset about it. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.